I would like to show you one last game from this book, Chess Middlegame Strategies by Ivan Sokolov, or Ivan Sokolov, volume 2, because the game is played between Polgar and Sokolov, and I believe all the games in this book and these Sokolov books are important. He's a great teacher, a great coach. We can really enjoy him for the price of the book that honestly is nothing compared to what a real grandmaster would charge us to teach us something. So that's why I like it, okay? With that said, so this is game 15, Judith Polgar against Ivan Sokolov. It was played in Ogeveen, probably Netherlands, in 2003. So Polgar is white, okay? E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop B5, A6, Bishop A4, Knight F6, Castle, Bishop E7, Rook E1, B5, Bishop B3, D6, C3, Castle, H3, Bishop B7, D4. Obviously this line is kind of long, but because the Ruy Lopez or Spanish opening has a kind of huge theory like the Sicilian, we could say. Rook E8, Knight B D2, Bishop F8, A4 and H6. In recent years, 12 Knight A5 has established itself as an alternative main line here, okay, instead of H6. But this was played obviously in 2003, so maybe the computers in 2003 didn't find anything better. Bishop C2, and here there is a diagram. And when there is a diagram, we already know that the author wants us to pay attention, right? He wants us to pay attention to the position. So eventually pause the video, take 1 minute to watch the position from black side and decide what you would play as black, okay? Here Sokolov played b4 and writes the following: a novel idea of mine, not previously seen in grandmaster practice, to get the game off well-trodden paths. My idea had not found any followers by the time of writing, though I guess the position coming after 15 d5, 97, c4, practically you have to see the comment at move 15, but we are not at move 15, are a bit passive and therefore do not appeal to black players. Now, looking back from some distance, I do admit that a reasonable amount of wishful thinking had come into my preparation. Fortunately for me, Judith did not react in the best way, and I secure good dynamic play. He also tells us that the main line at this point was E takes d4, and he gives the line up to move 16, which was obviously the subject of a fierce debate in the epic Kasparov-Karpov World Championship matches. So after b4, white played a5. One of the logical white responses, white takes the a5 squares from the black knight on c6, and this is the truth, because sometimes you think this and this are kind of problematic, or this And so you don't like to leave this square to the enemy, because the knight will make use of it. Yeah, so that's right. Okay. And in general, this move obviously takes space on the queen side. He also gives us a line instead with d5, okay? Let's see what happened. Rook b8. A standard Spanish developing move with prophylactic elements. Black is not really ready to open the center with b takes c3, b takes c3, and then e takes d4. And here he gives a long line that ends up to move 22. Notice we are at move 14, so I doubt that someone sees really more than 8 moves ahead in the opening, especially in the opening, because in the opening you really would have to do a big effort. Bishop e4, a logical move, though probably not White's best. However, sorry, just 1 second, we are speaking of 2003, and practically the theory was just 13 moves for 2 top grandmasters, because Sokolov maybe in 2003, maybe I don't know if he was one of the top, for sure Judith Polgar, she was one of the top 10. So obviously it's quite interesting to see that they only had the first 13 moves of a game, and they could create a opening novelty. Okay, so he said the logical move, well, probably not White's best. Black's rook on e7 will be placed less clumsily than it appears. In this position it is crucial for White to take space by pushing d4, d5 and c3, c4, and then maintaining the central e4, d5 and c4 pawn chain, which dooms Black to passive play. And here there are some big analyses made by Sokolov. That's why you would get a book like this. Why? Because practically you see how a real professional player work out the analysis of these games in the post-mortem, which is after he played them, right? After he played them, he works the analysis and tries to understand what went wrong, what was right, which one, also for White, not only for Black, right? So that's kind of important. So Black continue with rook e7, because he didn't like, obviously, the pinning. Bishop b3, rook e8. That's interesting. Because since he just came back, one would think, is he trying to offer a draw? Because if Polgar plays this, he plays this, they play this, and track, and obviously this lead to a draw. So that's kind of interesting. But at that point White changed, because she's not going for a draw. d5, knight e7, and knight c4. This allows Black to open up the center, obtaining active play. I now became very enthusiastic and went for the thematic piece sacrifice we are dealing with in this chapter. However, Black here has at his disposal other ways to open up the center and generate active play. It is interesting that Judith refrained from c4, that we were talking before, with advantage to White. Okay, that's interesting. B takes c3, preparing the stage for the thematic central piece sacrifice. Let's see what happens. Let's see the game at this point, and let's see what happens. Oh my god, here there are like more than two pages of analysis. B takes c3, and knight takes e4. Wow. That's the sacrifice he was talking about. The consequent follow-up to the previous move. Wow. Rook takes e4, knight takes d5. Obviously, it's a sacrifice, but if he gets all the central pawns and he gets a moving pawn avalanche, that can be a kind of advantage, I would say. Queen c2. This is the position I was aiming for with a sacrifice, so it's a good moment to take stock. As in our previous two examples, black has a formidable pawn center and a strong bishop on b7 as compensation for his sacrificed knight. White chances will be related to the potential weakness of a black king. At this particular moment, he's facing a serious practical dilemma. He says, in this moment, the black is facing this. Should he grab a pawn on c3, establishing material equality, a potentially free connected rolled pawn? Because when he takes here, this one is on pre by this. So obviously, if he takes, you take the rook, okay? And then says, or focus on active play and maximum piece coordination. Yeah, clearly it's difficult to know which. And here you could pause the video and decide for yourself what you would do. What would you play? Do you play this, or do you play, for example, this move? What would you like to play? Because you see, it's difficult. For example, I thought of this move, but I don't know if it's good. Instead, here I just noticed that he said that he played this. And here he says, taking the 4 pawn was definitely not a mistake, but in practical terms, white would have been facing tougher decision should black have gone for knight f4. So it seems that knight f4 was the move to play. But again, I just thought of it and I don't know if it's correct. Why I thought of it? Because, okay, there is this attack and then it starts to move the pawn majority. But unfortunately there is still here, so I don't know, obviously I don't know. However, it seems that Sokolov analyzed that, but as you can see here, from what I see, the lines were computer generated. So how do you really play like a computer? Because that's the reality, we don't play like computer, so I don't think it was possible. Yeah. And wait, there is also another move. There is this move, Queen f6 here, that is also generated by computer. It creates some very sharp lines. I don't know, clearly this position, this is a middle game position at this point, it's kind of complex and difficult for a human. Maybe it's worth for those who play the Spanish to spend some time on it and understand a little better the position. Or buy the book and watch all the analysis that Sokolov made, because also in this case there is nearly 1 page of analysis, so it's not a joke. He really did his job as coach for us. He's teaching us a lot, because if he gives us 1 page of his analysis, it's kind of important. Of course, there is also another thing to think about here, which is the thing Sokolov is retired, so he doesn't care to share his analysis. This is from 2003, now we are in 2024, 21 years later, yeah, he doesn't care. But maybe he wouldn't have shared this analysis with us in 2004. Rook g4. Judith correctly senses that her focus should be on the black king, The position is razor sharp, probably dynamically balanced, but I would say that in practical play it is easier to be white here. White is developing tactical threats against the black king, and black needs to neutralize them by pushing his central pawns and taking space. So black continue with bishop takes f3. Once more, here we have one page of analysis before arriving at the next move by white. So again, this work must be done. I think it's important for another reason. Botvinnik, that is famous for this series of books on this critical and analytical work, in which shows the way to analyze a game, would have done the same job that Sokolov did. So if we are not familiar with Botvinnik work, we can still understand how to analyze by watching one of the games of this book, but they are really thick in analysis. So that's what we must understand about chess, right? So it's true, we might not have the money for a coach that asks us, I don't know, $100 an hour, but we can have a book that maybe costs like $29, and boom, I get the same amount of information and the same amount of teaching if I pay attention, okay? If I pay attention. Okay, so let me check. The last move was bishop takes f3, then white plays g takes f3, and now there is a beautiful move by black, that is knight e2 check. Let's see what it says. It seems that he could have played also knight b5. Let's see what happens. Queen takes e2, rook takes b3, and bishop takes h6. Wow! Black's pawn on h6 has been lost, but white's monster light square bishop has been destroyed. Yes, because obviously it was really a kind of sword going to the heart of the enemy king. However, white's attack is far from over, and black must be in a hurry to use his only asset, his central pawns. So black should hurry to push the central pawns and seize space. Let's see. Queen f6. Obviously he says the immediate d5 doesn't work, and he shows it with some analysis. Knight d2, rook b5, bishop g5, queen e6, and king h2. So he wants to bring this rook into the game to attack. Now black is just in time to push his central pawns. d5, rook ag1, rook takes a5. That's kind of scary, honestly, because everything is pointing at the attack and he plays on the other side. Knight f1, a critical moment. Which pawn to push? I think d pawn. Yeah, I got it right. It seemed to me obvious that the d pawn needs to be advanced, creating the rook a2 threat, because once this pawn is advanced, the queen takes control. About the f pawn, I was not so sure, being reluctant to touch pawns around my king, so I didn't want to push this. I thought of d4 for another reason, honestly. I thought of d4 to avoid that he could play knight e3, because he doesn't want to go between the two rooks. Maybe he wanted to play knight e3, and for some reason knight f5 to try to attack this. So I thought d4, I take away the possible square. That's the reason why I thought d4, okay? However, that's funny, okay. Sorry, it seems that the computer found that f5 was the right move. Okay, as you can see, as human beings, we are totally blind. We will never find out the right continuation if we are not lucky. And what we think most of the time doesn't really matter. That's funny. Okay, however, look, he obliged to play, white played knight g3, so I was right, no? Another critical moment, being worried by the white pieces concentrating on the king side, I finally decided to push my f-pawn, but now is the wrong moment. Wow, f5. So imagine just one move late and everything changed. Everything changed. Okay, I think there is another problem here, because this is not really defended at this point. So before this was defending this, but if you play this, you can play rook takes d4, right? Okay, let's see what it says. Here it says the fourth real black mistake, missing white reply. And what is my white reply? Let's see. Let's see. Bishop d2. Wow. This is white reply. But why? In such a position, Judy Polgar does not need too many chances to score. One defensive slip was usually enough. Now white secures a winning advantage. Okay, let's see. F takes g4. Oh, bishop takes a5. Oh. Queen d5. Knight e4. Rook e6. Rook takes g4, c5, knight d2, e4 is another mistake. He says that he was in time trouble and this is a difficult position. He should have played queen a2, he says. F takes e4 and now white has a decisive final advantage. d3, e takes d5, but also queen e3 would have won. Rook takes e2. King g2, rook e5, knight e4, king f7, rook f4, check, king e8, d6, rook d5, bishop c3, and bishop takes d6, and rook f5, and this is the end of the game, because black lost at this point. Let's try to see what happens. If black takes here, obviously there is check. This is a fork, and so it takes back. Can black play something else? He cannot really escape from there. So I don't know. I don't think he can do much. And now we understand why the game is over. Also because this bishop honestly block this pawn from advancing, and so white should be able to actually finish easily. I hope you enjoyed this game from Chess Middlegame Strategies, opening Mr. Middlegame, Ivan Sokolov, Volume 2, Thinkers Publishing, a great book. Honestly, if you like especially to follow the analysis of a game, this is quite detailed, and the paper of the book, it's really heavy, so the publisher clearly invested in this book. I hope you will enjoy it.